Okay, you're live again. Let's go for it.
I'm Holly, and this is Wild Blessings Teaching Tuesday. Welcome to my wild kitchen. We just had some technical difficulties, so I'm not going to repeat everything I just said, but it is going to be an incredible class. We're going to be talking about wild fermentation. We're going to be recapturing some of these long lost arts that have been around since the beginning of time to preserve our food, and we're going to be coupling that with the wild harvest. The wild spring harvest, which is even better. I always start my class with garbling or herbing around. And so I was herbing around by taking off these flowers off the redbud tree to put in Jason's smoothie, which I did. And I also put in a whole bunch of Japanese knotweed that I'd cut up in little pieces, little discs, and that's in his smoothie as well. And I'm pretty sure he's excited about having it. One of the things I want to recommend is if that you want to get this nutrition into your food and your children are picky eaters or your husband's a picky eater, then disguise it. And so what's in here besides the Japanese knotweed and the redbud are some banana and frozen pineapple and some chocolate and protein. So I like making green smoothies, but this is like using the fruit of the earth along with the other things that Jace loves in his smoothies. So I'm going to give some to Kim as well. Welcome, Kim, to my wild kitchen. You want to come try it?
Sure, thank you.
Okay, and you can take this to Jason as well. Let me know what you think.
Just set mine down on the table.
Okay, sure. Oh, wow, I've got some too. Let me get a little bit just because I'm anxious to try it as well. All right, so Max and I were just out getting dandelions because Kim is here for lunch and we're going to have a wild lunch. And I wanted to fritter some of the dandelion blossoms. And so do you like it?
Love it.
Isn't that good? Oh my gosh, we did a whole class on Japanese knotweed last week and all the nutrition in it is off the charts. The time you want to get it is kind of now and before now when the shoots are really young and tender and flexible and just coming out of the earth. But I have harvested 5 times now because I want a freezer full of this amazing gift. I have found that every time I cut it, it's just encouraging the root, which is massive, to throw up more of the shoots, which is awesome. I also showed everyone how to take, I'm making dandelion wine, and so, or meads, or you can make sodas. And the way you do it is you hold the sepals and the calyx like this, and you just pull off each of the individual flowers. We did a whole class on dandelion, which was amazing because this is one of God's best gifts to us. The Lord says, "Oh, how many and varied are your works. In wisdom, you've made them all. The whole earth is full of your riches." So God has given us so many amazing, generous, abundant riches that we need to reclaim. And so I'm here to help you learn how to do that. And it is such a privilege. Welcome to all my new members. I'm so excited. Thank you, Mark, for inviting your friends. This is really a joy to be able to do what I love and share it with others as well. So welcome. You all can support me by sharing with other people. You can support me financially with Patreon so I can keep this free class going. Or you can participate on Wild Blessings with Holly Drake, which is our private Facebook group where I keep all of these lectures indefinitely so that you can watch them. This is our 12th or 13th class. Anyway, all the post topics, the poetry, the crossword puzzles, all of those are easy to find on our on our Facebook page. So welcome. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about wild fermentation. And before we do, I wanted to share with you about Japanese knotweed poem winner. And the poem winner.
Excuse me, I need to get this. But I want to put in an endorsement. I just love my Japanese knotweed with chocolate. I mean, it's just
chocolate.
You really can't beat it.
I have had many wild edible wild events. I call them wild food dinners, wild food feasts. I don't know, maybe 100 of them by now. And each time the people eat, we go harvesting together, and then we come back and we all cook it all up, and then we eat this amazing feast. And everyone says that they feel so more energized than after a normal meal. And that's because wild edible plants the enzymes are right there. We just picked them, for heaven's sakes. And that is incredible for digestion. So today we're going to learn about another hint for digestion and how to keep the enzymes really coming and growing and helping us digest through fermentation. But first I want to read to you some of these poems that I got on Japanese knotweed. If you want to learn about that and you didn't watch the video from last week, then I recommend that you watch it because it is such an important plant. It literally is taking over the world. And so if you can't beat it, eat it. And it is incredibly high in resveratrol, which we call reverse it all. And so it's amazing for heart health and especially fighting against Lyme. This week I dug up the root. I have a video that I think is going to be in my slideshow coming up on how I did that. And it was really hard because it's huge and woody. But what you're looking for is the orange on the inner cambium, because that is where the resveratrol is. And so I made a tincture with Scotch whiskey of the Japanese knotweed. So every day when I make a tincture, I just shake it and then I keep it in my linen closet where it's dark, so that it doesn't break down. So when I shake my tinctures, it's a really great time to be intentional and be grateful. And so I'm grateful for all of the things that Japanese knotweed tincture is going to do to help friends and people that use this tincture for their health. Another thing that I did with it is I made a vinegar, and all I did was pour apple cider vinegar over the whole plant, the root, the shoots, the leaves, and then I stir that every day. And always make sure when you're dealing with vinegars that you put on a plastic lid, because vinegar and plastic and metal corrode. Did a lot of crazy things this week, which we will see in my my slideshow. The only thing you're not going to see in my slideshow is you'll see the cattail swamp and you'll see the roots and you'll see how I dried the starch, but you're not going to see the finished product. And after all of those roots, this is all I ended up with. So I don't know if it's worth the effort, but I am going to make some bread with it. This is the leftover fiber from the roots that you'll see how I did that in a minute. But this is all I ended up with. So I don't know if it's going to be worth the effort. I think if I was in a survival situation, I would dig up those roots this time of year and just eat the starch and the carbohydrates just by pulling it off with my teeth. And that is tasty, but it's, it's a survival thing. High in nutrients, very high in carbs. Okay, so let's hear some of these poems and then I'll tell you who the winner was. All right, so Pastor Laura Went. This is from a class from before, and I just had to share this. She had been asking me, Holly, I've got this plant that's literally, it just grows every year, just enormous amounts, and I don't know what it is. Can you tell me? Well, that very day I was teaching on Japanese knotweed, and so she realized that that is what this plant was. So she said, backyard surprise. Growing fast and tall and strong, cutting back all weekend long, pushing, lurking, making way, a nuisance all the livelong day. But wait, surprise, it's actually good. We've got knotweed in the hood. Like rhubarb in the brush, it's edible. Its medicinal properties, incredible. Brain, cancer, heart, and Lyme, anti-aging. It reverses time. That's one of my favorite poems that one of my students ever wrote. And Laura, you just got to keep writing them. They're just awesome. And get your kids to write them too. I'm sure she still has Japanese knotweed because you can't get rid of it. It's just not possible. All right. And here's one from Lynn Maxwell, which is another one of my favorites. This prolific fanatic. The knotweed pie is juicy and sour. I watched the weed grow inches an hour. The merry stems grew through the attic to keep us young, this prolific fanatic. So if you're needy, look to this weedy. The knotweed reed is feedy, seedy, and greedy. She nailed it. Thank you, Lynn. Okay, and then this is from Jody. And Jody hasn't met knotweed yet. And she's like, I don't know where it is. I don't know where to find it. And I just said, go to your cooperative extension and they'll tell you exactly where it is. But it's called amperception. Once you see something, you start to see it literally everywhere. So Kim, when you go home today, you drive down 105 extension And you'll see right before Papa John's, it's completely on the left. It's gone underneath the road and it's completely on the right. And they're going to, I'm surprised the road is still in pieces. They spent $78 million for the London Olympics to try to eradicate it so they can make asphalt for parking. And, you know, it's still coming through the asphalt. It doesn't even need light to grow. All right. So this is what Jody wrote. And Jody, you won. So congratulations, dear. I would like to befriend you, but I don't know who you are. You are wild and exciting. A bully at that. Taking over and reproducing yourself. You must be everywhere. I will begin to look for you, but how can I find you? I still don't know what you look like. I will have to do some research. I'll look you up. I'll see pictures of who you are. You're still a mystery to me. Someday I will befriend you. So I wrote her and I said, well, just befriend him from afar. It's a destination plant. You don't ever want to bring it to your land. In fact, there are fines for people who do. And in Australia, you can't even buy a home if there's Japanese knotweed on the land. You wouldn't want to anyway. Okay, so I've been cooking Japanese knotweed all week long. I have used it in making wild sauerkrauts. I've used it in making stir fries. I've made it in my daily smoothie. I've been using it a lot because I have such deep respect for what it does for our cells. When you're wanting nutrition, you want to feed your cells and not just fill your stomach. So that's exciting. And I just wanted to share those poems with you. Okay, so congratulations, Jody. And keep the poems coming. They just make my day. And that's such a great way of participating or encouraging me, is just by participating in the different things we do together. I hope that you've been working on spring crafts. And I want to recommend that your spring crafts be educational or necessary. And so one of the crafts I wanted to recommend, I got to go get it real quick. Hold on. Let's see, where did I put it? Oh, it's in the hallway. Hold on. Okay, so this is called a drying stick. And you just get a little piece of wood like this, and you just hammer some nails in. And I'll be teaching you how to use this, but you kind of need this. So I would recommend those of you that have got your kids online, I think each of your kids need their own drying stick. And this will be where you'll be hanging bundles of herbs to dry. Excuse me. So that's a really important one. And then another great one is, where did I put them? Are the foraging bags that Pamela showed in our site. So go to our Facebook group and you'll see those, how she made them. They're super simple. Kim and I'll be making a few today. All it is just one seam and a little bit of cutting. And then you have a bag that you can, made out of a t-shirt. So that's what I'm going to be sending you today, Jody. So congratulations. All right, let's talk about fermentation. So like we talked, it is something that has preserved our food for millennia. This is what people did before they had refrigeration. And actually refrigeration and highly pasteurized and processed foods have caused havoc on our bodies and on our health. And I just think we need to reclaim this one for sure. So our gut is, the immunity that's in our gut is 80% of our immune system. So gut health is huge. And did you know that the bacteria that live in you is more, there's more of that than the cells in your body by tenfold. And so we are like, they're feeding off of us. And so there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria. And every time we take an antibiotic or some type of medication, or we eat, drink something with lots of sugar or whatever, it kills off the good bacteria and it causes an imbalance, a dysbiosis in our gut. And so one of the best ways that you can balance that out, your gut health, so that you can have better immunity, is to eat fermented foods, to drink water kefirs. There's so many different ways to ferment foods. There's chutneys, and there's with different fruits, and there's yogurts, and there's milk kefirs, and there's regular water kefirs. I forgot to bring mine out. This is what Kim and I are going to have for lunch today. This is a wild water kefir, and it's made with live water kefir grains, which we'll do a class on that when we talk about wild drinks. Let's see. What else can you ferment? You can ferment eggs. You can ferment cheeses are fermented. Sourdough bread, we're doing a class on that next week, is a fermentation as well. Soy sauce is a fermentation of soy. You just got to be really careful with that because most soy is genetically modified, and you've got to start with really healthy prebiotic plants that are the lactobacilli is on all living surfaces. It's on your skin. It's particularly in spring greens and spring roots. And so you can literally ferment with cabbage, which is a really good one, or any vegetables, just by adding a little bit of salt and getting it in an anaerobic environment where it's underneath the liquid of the water that we poured in, and make sure the water is quality too. It can't have chloride in it. It can't be from city water. So buy yourself some spring water, or if you have a good spring water from your tap or a filter or something, it needs to be really good. Everything that you're putting into this is going to be outstanding. Now you wonder, can I just buy this at the store? And no, you can't, because it's not fermented correctly. It's fermented with vinegar, which is also a fermented process. However, by the time they make it so pasteurized and so highly heated to kill off all germs. It's like we live in a germophobic society, and it is absolutely destroying our gut bacteria within the colony within our body. So in order to build it up again, fermenting is something that is so simple to do. And you can buy the expensive ferments like at Earth Fair. They're like $10 for a little tiny jar smaller than this. And that is done properly. But anything else like the regular sauerkrauts that you buy, it doesn't have the enzymatic processes or the vitamins and minerals that are so rich in the real thing. When it only costs pennies to do it yourself, then do it yourself. So I will give you some links below on some really good YouTube video channels that I've been watching on fermenting. I'm not going to sit here and chop up an entire cabbage, but I will show you how I add in the wild edible plants. So let me do that right now. So I'm definitely going to be adding to, well, let's talk about some more benefits really quick first. The 4 key ones. So the probiotics to bring in that balance of the good bacteria to fight the bad bacteria, because you want both. I mean, you don't want the bad, but you want to have a combo because our body knows how to handle it. The enzymes and the vitamins and minerals are so much enriched, and you need that to digest. So if you've got any gut health problems, any constipation problems, most of us have gut health issues. This is just going to be a phenomenal way to do this. It's also safer. And the reason why it's safer is because it will kill any E. coli. So it's even safer than raw foods. So the probiotics, the enzymes, the increased enzyme content helps you to absorb all these nutrients. So it's not what you eat, it's what you absorb as to how much health you have. Preservation. I was reading about how Captain Cook went around the world in his second trip around the world. He made sure that they had 67 barrels of sauerkraut on board, which really helped to keep his sailors from getting scurvy. And they were able, for 27 months, it took them to circumnavigate the earth, were able to stay healthy with just making sure that they had all of these salted meats and then the fermented foods. Cheeses are also ferments. Fermented foods are alive and kicking. The bacteria you ingest immediately gets busy by multiplying as long as there are plenty of good prebiotic foods available, balancing stomach acid and the good bad bacteria. It cuts the sugar. So even though some of these fermented foods, like this one, it has sugar in it to feed the bacteria, it balances it out because it utilizes the sugar as a food source. They are potent food chelators, which means they detoxify, and we need that. Studies have found that fermented foods have many anti-cancer properties. And wow, it was such a fascinating thing. So yogurts and sourdough breads and cheeses and ketchup, even relishes, all of those are fermented foods. So every week I'm going to be showing how to make one. So this week we're doing the fermented sauerkraut or kimchis. And I also did a fermented salsa that Kim and I will have for lunch. I made some Japanese knotweed chutney, which we're not going to talk about today, but I had it, so I used it. And then I made a cordito, which is so amazing. This is a Mexican sauerkraut. And listen to what's in it. This is amazing. So the normal things are cabbage and carrots and jalapenos, and make sure they're organic or get them from your farmer's market or grow them yourself. But listen to what I've got. I've got ramps and creasy greens and dandelion leaves and wild onion and red bud flowers, a lot of Japanese knotweed. I added to that some oregano and chili flakes, sea salt, and whey. And I love to use whey, which is a byproduct of raw milk. And so I have a little bit of that left because I've been fermenting a lot lately. And you want to use a good sea salt. So I'm using Redmond sea salt because it has 84 minerals in it. And you don't ever want to use the table salt that you get like from the grocery store, because that's only sodium chloride, and that is poisonous. I mean, that's why it's not a good thing to consume a lot of that or any of that. So one of the easiest things you can do to switch your health is to switch your salt from regular white sea salt that's been bleached to, regular table salt to sea salt. And so I love the Redmond, and I love it coarsely ground. I'm doing something really fun with the salt. I took some Japanese knotweed and I dried it, and I also put a lemon peel, because Japanese knotweed has a really lemony flavor. And I added some, this is really bonkers, but so I'm making a lemon salt really. And so what I did is I added papaya seeds because they're really peppery. So I'm going to grind all of this up, and I'm just going to put that in my shaker, and that'll be like a lemon salt that's kind of wild and fun. So that's another fun thing you can do. Or I can even use this when I'm making my sauerkrauts. Okay, so over here, I've got a red cabbage, and you want to cut them, get rid of the core, that heavy core in the middle, and take off the outer layers of the cabbage, and you'll need that for later. So you want to cut this core out and just chop it really small, or you could put it into a food processor. It really doesn't matter. I kind of like doing it by hand. I'm not really sure why. I think it makes me feel more intentional and more grateful. But so then after you cut this all up, you're going to put it into a non-reactive bowl. Really small, like really thin slices. So here's my non-reactive bowl. And to this, I'm going to add my wild foods. So I'm going to add a bunch of this chopped up. Let me show you some of the things I've got over here. And I'm not going to do this on tape because I've got a slideshow to show you on Surfing Nature's Wave in April. So I've got ramps, and I don't recommend always getting the bulb because ramps are endangered, but they're not endangered where I am. I literally have forests of them. So some people only just take one of the leaves, and you don't want to take both. But anyway, so chop this up fine, throw this in as well. Throw in some Japanese knotweed. I'm going to throw in some garlic mustard. I'm going to put in some nettle. And I'm going to put in, I think that'll probably, oh, you know what? I've got all of these wonderful wild onions and also some dandelion buds, which are delicious. So I'm going to probably definitely put in some of these as well. And then you're going to add 1 tablespoon of salt and 4 tablespoons of whey. And you're going to pound the heck out of it. It takes a while. So it'll be like a solid 10 minutes of pounding. So if you've got a teenager or if you've got a kid that's got a lot of excess energy, then just put them to work. And so they pound it all up, and until all of those juices are released, the salt just breaks down the cell walls, and all of this nutrition, all of this, it just turns liquidy, and also still crisp. But you want to do it until it's got the water that completely comes. You don't add any water to this. It just brings the water out of the actual vegetables. So where did I put? Oh, here it is. So I like to use wide mouth containers like this. So when this is all chopped up and it's all mashed up and stuff, then I'll use a wide mouth funnel to fill it and keep pushing it down until, I'll show you, this is my regular sauerkraut one. This has ramps, caraway seeds, garlic mustard, and wintercress, salt and whey, of course. So I'm going to show you how it's really important that it's in an anaerobic environment without any oxygen to cause spoilage. So see how I'm pushing down, and all of this, Jace, can you show people? There's all of this liquid. Actually, this is, I probably should put a rock or something to push this down, because you want to keep the plant material underneath the liquid for sure. So yeah, see all that liquid? It's smelling really sauerkrauty. It takes about 2 weeks to get to the right, till you really want to consume it. You can consume it now and have some now if you wish, but it's to have all of the enzymes and the, not the enzymes, but the vitamins and minerals and the lactobacilli where you want it, the lactic acid. It takes about 2 weeks. Although this will stay preserved for months. In fact, better than canned foods. So this is a great way to preserve foods. So I hope that encourages you to want to not only forage, which we'll talk about next, but to ferment so that you can preserve your wild harvest. All right, so now I'm going to go over to my computer and we're going to do a slideshow where I take you through nature's wave. This will be showing you what you should be getting in April. April is early spring greens, and those are the highest in nutrition. They're called spring tonics because the nutrients and the energy are in the leaves. All that energy then goes into the early shoots. Well, actually the shoots first, then the leaves. Then it goes into the flower buds, and then it goes into the flowers, and then all the energy goes to make seed. And so you got to surf nature's wave so that you're getting things at the height of their energy. It's all about energy. So I hope that makes sense. And I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I'll join you in a second over here. Okay, hon, how do I do this? Oh, one more thing. I made an apple. Wow, look at those bubbles. It's alive. This is the first time I've ever made a vinegar, and I thought the reason why I need to is because I'm always buying it. It's expensive. You want to get it with the mother. So yeah, put this down. So all I did is, since I was making apple Japanese knotweed chutney, I took all of my leftover peels and the cores, and I threw them in along with a couple of pieces of apple, added some sugar, covered it with water, and then you just stir it with a wooden spoon every day, and you make sure that it can breathe a little bit. So I put a little, I've never done this before, so I'm really excited. I can't wait to see how this works out. I'm going to make lots of different vinegars, but yeah, so that's exciting. Okay, you ready? I am ready.
All right, let's switch gears here. Just use the.
Okay, thank you. All right. So if you've never been to my website, it's wildblessings.com. And as you go there, you'll see a pop-up screen. Give me your contact info and I can let you know when I'm having events or something. And as a result, you'll get this amazing wild edible plant-free handout, which I call it a bucket list. And so these are just my favorite wild edibles. There's literally thousands of wild edible plants, but these are my favorite leaves and shoots and roots and buds and so forth. So you can get that for free by going to my website. Nature's Wave is the art of harvesting God's edible plant gifts at the peak of their energy when they are the most nutritious and tasty. This skill of consuming leaves and shoots and stems and buds and flowers and pods and fruits and seeds and roots or bark for food and healing used to be common knowledge. Each season highlights new treasures to be gathered and enjoyed. In the winter, the energy is stored in the roots and the bark. In the spring, the energy transfers to young leaves and shoots. In the summer, the energy bursts forth up the stem to the buds and flowers and fruits. And in the fall, the energy is spent making seeds and fruits and nuts. After the first frost, the energy dies back right into the roots to build up for the next spring. Kim, if you want to come sit over here, you can watch. Or can you see there?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so this is April, and this is early edible bulbs, and this is ramps. So here's Max and I looking for ramps. Whoops, I don't know what happened. How do I get it?
Press down again and it'll play.
Press enter?
Down.
Down? Okay. So the buds are coming out on the trees, and can you hear it?
They can hear it.
Oh, I can't hear it.
Oh, it stopped.
That's all there is. Okay, so here you can see the ramps, and they're literally all over this mountain.
I don't think folks can hear the audio of those, so you should talk about what you see there.
Okay, I have this on video, and I can't tell whether you all can hear what I'm saying. So I was just showing you a poisonous look-alike to ramps called the false hellebore, and it right next to each other right there. So I'll probably have to show you it in person because it's just too important that you don't harvest the false hellebores. The key is that the false hellebores, this drives me crazy. Can I take this off, Jace? All right, is that the false hellebores have no smell of garlic. So that's the big thing, is does it smell like it? And also you can see they don't even really look the same. So, all right, I'm trying to figure out this technology. Sorry, guys. All right, here's the ramps back at home, all cleaned and ready to make into salsa or whatever. Another edible fruit or root that you want to get right now is the cattail roots, because all of the energy is in the roots now. So here I was at the cattail swamp just last week with my friends, and I got a bunch of them. They look kind of like, there's the girls, my apprentices are cleaning them in the river, and they look very alien-y like. Look at all those root hairs, pretty creepy. And then what I did is I scraped off the roots, and all of this fiber comes out, and then I put all of that into a jar of water, and this starch falls to the bottom. You can see the bundle at the top of the starch of the fiber that I was able to squeeze it out. I found some hints on how to do it. So if you ever want to do cattail root, I'll be happy to explain it, but it's a little bit involved. After all of that drying, I only got a tiny bit of flowers, so I'm not sure it's worth it, but you can certainly eat the root. Cow parsnips are also out right now, and their energy is in the root before they send up the shoots. Honestly, guys, I wouldn't even bother with these because they look very similar to a very, very deadly poisonous lookalike called water hemlock or poison hemlock. And so until I do a class on that or you get some real instruction, I would stay away from the parsley family, especially this one. But they're delicious, and you can buy them at Earth Fare. Okay, so here is a video. Max and I are down at the Todd Island Park. Should I be talking, Jason? Okay. And we're looking for Japanese knotweed. And we had missed being there for 2 weeks, and look at what had happened in just 2 weeks' time. All these shoots are up and almost a little too tall because you're looking for them when they're like shin high, but they'll get up to 15 feet tall. And I'm just obsessed with these. I've been collecting. I've been back 4 or 5 times gathering freezer full so I can have plenty to make jams and jellies. And it's like a rhubarb substitute, or it's very lemony. Use it however you would use an apple. You can see the dried mass, the biomass from last year's growth, and that can be used for biomass and also for fire starter. Dry, very dry. You can see how the Japanese knotweed is spreading in this area. And I was trying to dig up the root. So let's see. Look at this whole area. It has just grown leaps and bounds since when I first observed it a few years ago. It grows by rhizomes, tap roots, and also has winged seeds. So you got to get every bit of it if you want to eradicate, and that's very hard to do. It's very, very hard to dig up the roots. And here I am trying to dig it right here. You want the inner cambium of the roots. And I actually was finally able to get that out, but I'll save you watching any more of this. Max is always helpful. Okay. So here I am back in the kitchen, and I've garbled them, meaning cleaned them off. I put the stems directly in water to keep them fresh until I'm able to work with them. And it's a good idea to take off the outer epidermis because it's a little bit tough, but at this stage, it really wasn't. I didn't need to do that. I always save the stuff that I had taken off and put it into either, well, never my compost with Japanese knotweed, but into the freezer so I can use for bone broth. Here's an example of some of my bagged up Japanese knotweed, and the ones for bone broth is on the left. Here's the smoothie. I love making smoothies with Japanese knotweed. And I thought that I'd be able to use it as a straw because it has a hollow stem, but that's not true because at every single node, it's in the Polygoniaceae family, which means many need. And so every node is like a little knee or a joint. There is a solid, little solid tissue that goes across, and so you can't use it as a straw. But you can break them at that point, and there's always water in them. So if you're ever thirsty and you want to drink something clean, then you can, and Japanese knotweed is nearby, you can drink the inside of the stem. Okay, I've been using them as vegetables all week. I think my favorite way was with chicken piccata because it soaked up the capers and the lemon and the chicken and the Parmesan to make a really delicious flavor. Another edible shoot is a hosta, and they are beyond belief. They are so good. They are probably one of my absolute favorites, and I know they're not wild, but they certainly are prolific. And there's a reason why the deer eat them. So, so good. So just take a knife, cut them up, boil them up, and put some béarnaise sauce on it. Here's some Solomon seal shoots, and these taste just like asparagus. Very delicious, super tender. Oh my word. I loved it. So it's the first time I've ever harvested them this year, and I put them on a spaghetti squash that was cooked, and I did it with the hostas and the Solomon seal, a little bit of wild mustard and some ramps, and then I covered the whole thing with some béarnaise sauce, and it was so, so good. Okay, now we talked about the roots and the bulbs and the shoots. Now we're talking about the wild greens of April. So the violets, of course, have been out for a while, and we're going to do a whole class on this, but you can't go wrong with eating these leaves. Just make sure that they're not the groundsel, which looks similar, but really not. And that is toxic. And that has the yellow Asteraceae flower at the top, which is everywhere right now. And unfortunately, it is not edible. But violets sure are, and they're very medicinal. Wild lettuce, do you know that every single lettuce that we have today came from wild lettuce? So if you get the early little tiny rosettes, then they are tasty, not tasty, they're edible. They get very unpalatable, unbelievably bitter. And so I really like to use them mostly for their flower buds, which taste like peas, and they're delicious, and they get to be about 15 feet tall. They're also excellent medicine for a pain relief or an anodyne. The wild strawberry, very bitter as well, but it is edible, the leaf, especially the little tiny ones. Remember we talked about microgreens, and microgreens are always tender and tasty and super good in nutrition. This is my absolute favorite. Okay, this is weird, and there are probably not a lot of them out right now, but this is the jewelweed cotyledon, and it is not the true leaf of the jewelweed. This is just when it first comes out, it has this very thick, crunchy, delicious, nutty, sweet, false leaf that comes, and the real leaves come below it. The real leaves are not tasty at all. I mean, you can eat them, but there's no great value to it. The next thing that you're going to want to eat after you eat the cotyledons are the flowers, and the seeds taste like walnuts if they're yellow, from the yellow flowers, and they taste like pecans if they're from the orange cornucopia style flowers. So if there's any of these still out there, I think already the real leaves have already come out, but next year get these early because they are a delicacy. Spiderwort is out now too. You want to get that when it's tiny. Dame's Rocket, all mustards are edible. Trilliums are out, and they are edible as well, but they're also endangered. So, just try a leaf or try a flower, but I wouldn't go harvesting a lot of these because they are an endangered flower, but they're delicious. Queen Anne's lace is the wild carrot, Daucus carota, and this is what our cultivated carrots came from. And so you can get the roots in the early spring, and you can also get their tiny little leaves in the early spring for a carroty flavor. Nettles I'm going to do a whole class on this one as well. They're everywhere, and they really come out in January and February and March as well. So this I would have gotten earlier. But when they get too tall, you can always get the tender tops, and don't bother with the bottoms. And be extremely careful because of all of the formic acid needles that are all over this plant. But once it's cooked or dried, those needles and that formic acid has been neutralized, and it's high, high, high in nutrition. Here I made a nettle omelet. I collected that nettle, by the way, from Betty Thomas's Creek Song Farms, and man, it is just beautiful out there. Here's some of her nettle drying. And you want to get a whole winter's worth of this so that you can make like a soup or teas with it, because it's so nutritious for you. And here's the whole bunch of amazingness right close together. There's some chickweed and garlic mustard and dead nettle all mixed up together, and those are all prolific. Chickweed's going to go away soon because the weather's going to warm up, and it only likes cold weather. The garlic mustard is going to get very tall, and it won't be as tasty as it was in April. These stalks of the garlic mustard are really tasty, and you can use them like a vegetable. And this is a new one for me this year. I can't remember. I think Karen asked about this, and I knew it was edible, but I had never tried it. And actually, toothwort is delicious. And not only are the flowers like the sweetest lettuce you've ever tasted, the leaves are good too. And they have these unusual little tubers that look like teeth. And so like vampire teeth or something, but they're really tasty. And so I've been having fun nibbling on that as like a trail nibble, but I haven't actually cooked with it. Yarrow is not edible, but it's medicinal, and this is just a beautiful patch. It is edible, it's just not tasty. And then red clover is a powerful, powerful plant for nutrition. Cleavers, get it in the early stage, because once it gets too much bigger, it will be unpalatable, but it will still make a very good vinegar, and it's a great lymph mover. This is one of my favorite medicines. Wild daisy. Goldenrod, the flowers are mostly what I eat. They're 7 times higher in antioxidants than green tea. So if anyone knew the power of goldenrod, I think if they could bottle it up with some orange and lemon juice, I think it would be amazing if people knew what value it had. But I love to make goldenrod punch. The early leaves are good to throw in a salad if you chop it up small, very, very bitter, but it's a good microgreen. And the ground ivy is something as well that is everywhere right now in April, and that makes a good tea. It's used in making beer as well. Of course, dandelions. Look at this beautiful picture of Betty's magical door and the dandelions in front of it. It just looks like something out of it's just magical. And then there's the early leaves. And then edible trees. So you can collect maple leaves and eat those and throw them into your salads. The key to a great salad is to chop things small. The birch catkins, I've been eating those. They don't really taste like anything, but they're extremely high in nutrition, and they give a little crunch factor to your salad. And the birch sap is good to be harvesting now and last week. So if you want some, get it now. It comes after the maple harvest. Spicy sassafras, I've been eating these like crazy. They're so good. Sassafras just tastes amazing. It tastes like root beer, but these early flowers and leaves are so crunchy and they taste like root beer. Hawthorn leaves are also edible, and they make great medicine. This is the best medicine I know of for heart health. So get the early leaves, get the early flowers, get the early haws, even put thorns in it and make some every year. Okay, and then here we had a freeze last week. It was super cold, and then it snowed just a week ago, even though it's going to be 80 degrees here tomorrow. But this was the day before the snow, and here's my apple tree. And what's concerning when it freezes like that is that it can cause the fruit production to cease. And so sometimes we'll go through whole seasons where we don't have any apples here in the high country if we had a late spring freeze, but the flowers are edible. So this was our spring fling last Tuesday. We had a dandelion celebration. Everyone brought a meal or a dish made with dandelions. And this was a black bean chocolate cake on the right that I made. And then Lucy decorated with redbud flowers and with apple flowers. Beautiful. So I love foraging at different locations. I've got many different grocery stores, and this is one of my favorites. There's my little boy. He just loves going along with me. I make sure that I go where nobody else is going to be because he doesn't really get along with other dogs. Look at the redbud tree on the right. So much food. I mean, it's just incredible. And the buckeyes are coming out. And even though they're not edible, they're so fascinating to watch. There are 45 leaves in one terminal bud. Look at that. Yeah. Oh, is it coming through? Sorry. It makes an echo. Just listen to it. Well, it's over. Okay. So this is what it looks like when I come home. My back of my car is always filled with buckets, and these are all ready to be garbled and cleaned and put on display. So this is what it looks like when it's garbled, clean, and on display. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so when you get home, the first thing I want to do is I want to transplant things. So a few weeks ago, I showed how I grew vegetables from scraps, and so I'm going to be transplanting these soon, but they're doing great. But these are the creasy greens I got, and I harvested the tops off to cook with, and I've got the rest so I can transplant them. I got some bluets from a field, and I'm putting them immediately. I put them where I wanted them along my path. Elders, I have lots of elders, and what I did is I caught a whole bunch of cuttings and I just stuck them in the ground, and they have so much root tone in them that, look at this, they're just growing. This is crazy. All I did was stick it in the ground. So, all right, so the transplanting is important to do right away because you don't want to cause too much root shock. So here's cleaned and ready to cook. And then you've got a wild shopping counter space when you're making your salsas and ferments and whatever. So here we are cooking with wild edible plants. So this last couple of weeks, I made a lot of dandelion fritters, different types of salsas and different types of cuisines. Here's the wild sauerkraut that I was telling you about, the cordito. Let's see.
People can't hear.
Oh, okay. So that was dandelion. This is wild onion. This is wild onion stalks, or just the greens. Red bud, Japanese knotweed, wild mustard flowers, ramps, wild something, and jalapenos and carrots. And that's what's in my wild sauerkraut. And of course, you add the salt. Okay. I made some chutneys with the Japanese knotweed. Basically, all I did was look for rhubarb recipes, and then I would just replace it with Japanese knotweed. Here's another wild sauerkraut I'm making. Here's wild salads that we had this week. Look at all the abundance that April has to offer. All of the edible leaves that we talked about earlier are in these salads. I made an Indian stir fry. And this is the way it turned into an Ayurvedic noodle bowl. I love making wild root and bone broths with chicken feet, which is the secret ingredient, but there's all kinds of scraps from wild roots and barks and stuff in there as well. And then I made it into a healing soup for a friend who just had surgery. And then I just want to remind you to be still and know that God is God and you're not. And I think every time we spend in nature, we get to just revel in his presence and in his handiwork. And we learn so much about the Creator by what he has made. His invisible attributes and his divine power have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made. So make sure you're still doing your sit spot. And don't forget the peaceful rhythm of spending 5 minutes of total silence at your sit spot. Teach this to your children. No talking, no goofing around, just be quiet for 5 minutes. And Max knows just that he's going to be in my arms for 5 minutes while I sit there and just absorb God from the outside in. And then when the timer goes up, he just jumps up and we get on with our day. But that's one of the wonderful rhythms that I want to recommend you put into your daily schedule. We look to God to give us our food in due season. He gives to us and we gather it up. He opens his hand and we are satisfied. You send forth your spirit and we are created and you renew the face of the ground. Okay, so you can follow me as I forge through nature's wave on YouTube at Wild Blessings YouTube channel, which Jason just started for me. So I'm excited about that. And I'll be putting lots of videos there. And this has been Wild Blessings. Should I go back up here? Okay. All right. So I hope you enjoyed that. It's kind of like foraging with Holly for a couple of weeks. All right. So I wanted to share with you what your field work is for this coming week. And so I'm going to recommend that you eat something wild every day. I'd like to say every meal, but every day. And then I'm going to start a page on our Wild Blessings Facebook group where we can post the pictures of in the comments of what it is you ate and your comments about it. So don't forget, something can be edible, and but it all has to do with preparation. So I'm working really hard, guys, on my wild edible cookbook, and that will be helpful. But there's a lot of things out there that are already helpful. So you can learn from others and not just from me. And so don't make that an excuse. Holly hasn't taught me yet. You can find it on the web for sure. All right, so eat wild every day. That's one of your assignments. And then the other one is to do a drying stick, because this, I mean, it looks like a craft, but it's really important. And we're going to be doing a lot of drying, especially as nature's wave gets even more crazy and the plants just grow so prolifically. You can get 2 or 3 harvests of lemon balm or of different mints or whatever if you harvest them at the right time for making teas. And so I've got maybe 80 teas in my pantry that I have dried and have for different medicinal purposes and for different drinking and soups and broths and stuff. So this is an important thing to do. So if you can do this, great. Or make some other kind of spring craft. The wild edible or the t-shirt bags that Pamela showed us how to make are pretty cool. So I'll be sending that one to you, Jody, this week. And what else? Keep up your sit spot, keep up your journaling. There's no poem this week, but I do want you to post pictures of something wild that you ate, and I'll pick a winner from that. So for next week. So God bless you, and wild blessings are abounding, and I hope this has been a help to you and a blessing to you. Bye.
Amen.